I am Nancy, and I have an older brother named Keith, who is 7 years my senior. Since childhood, Keith displayed exceptional academic prowess, excelling from an early age. He graduated from a prestigious high school and university, and naturally, our parents were immensely proud of him. They often spoke about Keith's remarkable achievements. Growing up in an environment where he was expected to excel and constantly praised, Keith's personality underwent some changes. Upon graduating from university and finding a job, he decided to leave our family home, sarcastically remarking, "I can't bear such a mundane life in this house anymore." I'll never forget the wry smile on his face at that moment. Our parents, visibly surprised and somewhat saddened, recalled how cheerful and cherished Keith used to be. Admittedly, I felt anger during that time. I didn't stand out academically or in sports, and my high school wasn't super prestigious. Still, I valued the bond and love within our family. Both Keith and I owed our lives to our parents' support, and I wished he felt the same. Throughout my high school years, I realized the warmth and love of a family are precious. Strangely, my brothers seemed immune to that love. Our parents showered us with endless affection, yet Keith perceived them as ordinary people. As a child, he was my hero, handling everything perfectly. He used to care, play, and help me study. However, by the time I was about to graduate high school, he started questioning the value of higher education and dismissed my pursuits. Whenever confronted, he blamed our parents, claiming he became this way because of them. I cried, but my parents reassured me, saying, "Nancy, you've grown into a truly kind-hearted person." Encouraged by their kindness, I entered a national university and secured a job at my dream company. By the time I started working, my parents were almost 60, and my brother was already married. Oddly enough, neither my parents nor I had met his wife. Despite numerous invitations, he hesitated, citing considerations about introducing her to our family. About half a year into my new life as a working professional, an unexpected event disrupted my routine. During work hours, I received a personal call from my usually aware mother. Concerned, she inquired about my well-being and then dropped the bombshell. "Your father suddenly fell." My heart sank, and I immediately informed my supervisor, rushed to catch a taxi, and hurried to the hospital my mother had mentioned along the way. As I made my way to the hospital, my mind was filled with repeated hopes and prayers for my father's well-being. Upon entering the waiting room, a heart-wrenching scene unfolded. My mother, tears streaming down her face, greeted me with visible distress. "What happened, Mom?" I asked, settling beside her with a heavy heart. The morning had started like any other, and the sudden turn of events left me unable to process the unfolding situation. Words poured out of me, one after another, seeking answers. After a pause, my mother quietly uttered, "Your father has been diagnosed with cancer." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, causing time to momentarily stand still. The shock, surprise, and anxiety within me spilled out in my voice as I questioned, "Why?" Taking a deep breath, my mother began to speak with a tone laced with sadness. "It's stage 4. The cancer has spread to the bile duct, and they said it's hard to remove it all." Her tears flowed uncontrollably, and I struggled to find words as I listened, grappling with the weight of the news. Seeking a glimmer of hope, I asked, "What treatment will be done next?" My mother nodded somberly, and after a brief pause, the attending physician entered to explain the detailed condition and treatment plan. The reality of my father's illness had surpassed expectations, with confirmed metastasis to other parts. Even if they operated, there was a significant risk, and success couldn't be guaranteed. In the heavy silence of the waiting room, my mother and I held hands, attempting to come to terms with this harsh reality. The doctor's matter-of-fact words emphasized the crucial choices ahead: continuing with chemotherapy or opting for support in a palliative care ward. The ticking of the clock's second hand seemed to carve through the atmosphere, underscoring the gravity of the situation. Contemplating how to navigate this challenging moment, I suggested involving my brother Keith in the decision-making process. Picking up my smartphone with a forced smile, I informed my mother that I had already attempted to contact Keith. However, recalling his past behavior and nature, I sensed a premonition: his reluctance to face tough decisions. Despite his potential resistance, I persevered, believing in the importance of gathering the family's opinions. After numerous attempts, I finally heard my brother's slightly irritated voice, urgently and anxiously. I pressed him to understand our father's condition, emphasizing the need for his presence at the hospital. His dismissive response lacked empathy, shaking me to the core, as I reminded him of our father's immense contributions to our family. Tears threatened to spill as I confronted my brother's apparent indifference to our father's critical condition. However, my brother, devoid of any visible emotion, briskly stated, "Now is not the time to be fussing over this. There's no point in discussing further. I'm hanging up," and promptly ended the call. Stunned by the exchange, I found myself at a loss. My astonishment at my brother's indifference was evident. I had known he lacked a sense of family bond and gratitude, but I never imagined he had grown into such a detached person. Returning to my mother, a look of concern was etched on her face. "What happened?" she inquired. I replied, "It seems he is quite busy now," avoiding the details. My mother sighed deeply, murmuring, "It would have been comforting if Keith was here." In the following months, my father chose to spend his final moments in a palliative care ward, and after that decision, he quietly passed away. I informed my brother of this somber news over the phone, conveying the details of the wake and funeral. However, his response was cold, stating, "I'm busy with work, so I can't attend. Please proceed without me." True to his word, he didn't appear at our father's wake or funeral. Even my mother seemed shocked by this fact. She probably never imagined her son wouldn't show up for his father's funeral. Both family and acquaintances expressed their surprise and disappointment at his absence. After the funeral, when a moment of quiet settled among the family, my mother exhaled deeply, muttering to herself, "He really didn't come." I took her hand and said firmly, "Mom, let's not worry about him anymore. We have to let him walk his path. For now, let's cherish our memories of Dad." In response, my mother tightly squeezed my hand and smiled, saying, "Thank you." Unbelievably, the next day, my older brother suddenly appeared at the apartment where we live. When I opened the door, his expression was different from usual, filled with an urgent restlessness. Stepping inside, he demanded, without any greeting, "Where is the inheritance father left behind?" Shocked by his demand, I emotionally retorted, "Seriously? Someone who didn't even show up at the funeral. And now you're saying this?" Visibly irritated, my brother snapped, "Kids should stay quiet," instantly tensing the atmosphere. My mother stepped forward to calm the situation, explaining, "Apart from this apartment, your father didn't leave much behind." "There's no way that's true." Retorting in frustration, my brother barely concealed his anger. Remaining calm, my mother placed my father's passbook on the table for him to see. Flipping through it, it became clear that all the savings our father had were transferred to a different account. "What is this all about?" my brother exclaimed in surprise. Gently, my mother replied, "Your father had instructed to move all the money to my account earlier. Also, this apartment's name has been changed, and now it's in my name." Taken aback, my brother was at a loss for words. He merely clicked his tongue in frustration and left. As we watched his departing figure, we were once again filled with admiration and gratitude for our father's foresight and his plan to protect the family. A few months later, my mother suddenly fell, and she was immediately taken to the hospital. It was completely unexpected, and the family was filled with shock and concern. The diagnosis revealed that she had pneumonia, and it was in a more advanced stage than we thought. I recalled that she had been coughing slightly lately, and when she visited a small clinic, the diagnosis was a minor cold. Relieved by this news, we didn't think much of it. However, more detailed examinations at a major hospital revealed a much more severe condition, giving her only about 3 months to live. Hearing this news left me speechless, as it seemed unimaginable, especially considering how healthy she appeared. Tragically, just a few days after the 3-month mark, my mother quietly passed away, leaving a space filled with an indescribable stillness and sorrow. Filled with guilt and grief, I questioned why I didn't notice sooner and why I didn't take her to a bigger hospital immediately. Even after learning about my mother's pain, there was no sign of my brother coming to our house. My aunt, my mother's sister, and I handled the arrangements for the wake and the funeral. Understandably, my brother's absence was a significant shock for my aunt, just as it had been during our father's funeral. However, expecting or saying anything to my brother felt meaningless, given his past actions. A few days after the funeral, as my aunt and I were sorting out the heirlooms, my brother appeared again, accompanied by his wife, whom we were meeting for the first time. He bluntly inquired about our mother's inheritance, assuming she must have left something. Shocked and dumbfounded, my aunt stared at him in disbelief. The most astonishing part was that beside my brother stood his wife, my new sister-in-law, who neither met our eyes nor greeted us. She just stood silently next to my brother. Even more shocking was that my brother didn't even visit our mother's grave, trying to maintain calmness. I suggested, "Brother, please at least pay your respects to our parents. Visit Mom's grave." However, he responded dismissively, "Does that even mean anything?" He quickly followed up with, "By the way, how much of Mom's inheritance is left?" At that moment, May's expression changed drastically. In a voice filled with anger, contrasting with her usual warmth, she sternly admonished Keith, "How can you think of such things at a time like this? Nancy is managing the funeral on behalf of both of you, putting in all her effort. Shouldn't you act with a bit of gratitude, thinking of your parents?" However, my brother completely ignored our aunt's anger, responding dismissively, "Auntie, it's none of your business. Don't interfere." With demands made by both my brother and sister-in-law, the atmosphere in the room became cold and tense. Behind my brother, his smiling sister-in-law remarked, "Of course, I remember your name, Nancy. Do you plan to keep all of your mother's inheritance for yourself? Sorry, but we can't allow that. This apartment is so lovely. I think it's perfect for us." I never imagined that my brother and his wife would make such audacious demands. "Why should I have to leave for the sake of both of you?" I asked, my voice quivering. Undeterred, my sister-in-law continued, twirling her finger. "This apartment has just been renovated, and its location is amazing. It's close to the station, and there are plenty of shops, so we'll be living here." My anger reached its peak, and I couldn't hold back. "Big brother, all you care about is the inheritance. What are you thinking?" Turning away, my brother let out a heavy sigh, remarking, "Such vulgar behavior. Do you think raising your voice solves everything? We'll be back here in 3 days. Have everything ready to move out by then." Their intentions became crystal clear with those words. A mix of my anger and sadness bubbled up, and I couldn't stop my tears from flowing. However, this wasn't just a one-time event. Determined, I wiped my tears. My aunt gently tapped my shoulder and handed me a letter. The delicate handwriting of my mother adorned the envelope's surface. "What's this, Auntie?" I asked, carefully opening the envelope. "Your mother entrusted this to me for a just-in-case scenario. She told me to give it to you at the right moment," my aunt said, tears forming in her eyes. Unfolding the paper inside, my mother's beautiful handwriting filled the page. "To my precious Nancy, if you are reading this letter, it means I'm no longer in this world. I'm truly sorry for our parting." Warmth filled my eyes, tears beginning to flow. "You might have Keith visit the house concerning the inheritance, but don't worry, everything that your father handed down to me is now yours." I was at a loss for words. I had no idea my mother had thought this far ahead and prepared everything in advance. "I'm sorry for suddenly leaving you alone, but I'm at peace because I've seen how much you've grown into a wonderful person. While learning is essential, it's not everything. The kindness and compassion you learn through your interactions with people are what I believe hold the most value. Your father and I were genuinely happy to see you grow up with such a warm heart until our last days. Words can't express just how proud we are of you. I truly want to express my heartfelt gratitude. Thank you. Overwhelmed, I read on, deeply moved. Mom. The words before me blurred with my tears, but I was determined to take in every sentiment my mother had conveyed and continued reading. Actually, after your father passed away, following his wishes, I secretly changed the apartment's ownership to your name. I'm sorry for using your seal without permission, but it was both your father's and my wish. Please don't be angry. Life has its ups and downs. Even when things get tough, we want you to persevere and live your life fully. So stay strong and find your happiness. The letter ended there, tears streaming down my face, wetting the paper. My aunt, standing next to me, pressed her eyes and shed tears alongside me. Your sister truly cared about you. In her heart, you were a treasure, my aunt said, gently holding my hand. From the envelope, a bank book in my name emerged. It seemed like something my mother must have secretly made in the past. To my surprise, when I opened the bank book, a substantial amount was recorded. I felt that this was probably the inheritance from my father that my mother had saved for me. A few days later, my brother and his wife showed up at the house without even knocking on the door. They entered as if it was their own home. It's time for you to leave, just as promised, right? My brother sarcastically said. As I stood still, my sister-in-law became irritated. Isn't it your duty to leave quickly? She said, almost as a command. For a moment, I felt overwhelmed by the atmosphere, but I took a deep breath, looked them straight in the eyes, and said calmly, actually, this house is now under my name. With that statement, the room's atmosphere became tense. My brother and his wife looked at each other, exclaiming, What? What kind of joke is this? I am the eldest son. I should inherit the house, right? Clearly shaken, my brother said. Beside him, my sister-in-law stared at me, saying, This is the first I've heard of this. However, I had decided to state the facts. The house and the inheritance are all managed under my name, so there's nothing to divide. My brother frowned. Then hand over half of that inheritance to us. But I questioned his face turning red. This money was left for my future and to ensure that I take care of the house. You always looked down on me, and now you're asking for money? What changed? Surprisingly, my sister-in-law exclaimed, Wait, what is this? This isn't what we were expecting. From what I gathered, my brother recently faced significant trouble at his job and was subsequently fired. Not only that, but he and his wife were moving from one day job to another, seemingly in a tight spot financially. They probably had high hopes for my mother's inheritance and the house. But with my revelation, their expectations were shattered, and they began bickering, placing blame on one another. Watching their childish dispute, I thought, what can possibly be gained from all this? To them, I said calmly, This is my house now. If you make any unnecessary fuss, I'll call the police. Trembling with anger, they reluctantly accepted my words and left. Since then, I've had no contact with them. I deliberately deleted all their contact details and began a new life in this apartment. This apartment is my treasure, filled with memories of my father and mother. Now I have a loving partner by my side. We plan to build a new family in this apartment. He respects my decision and proposed that we take the first step of our new life here. Our future is bright, and I want to pass on the warm love my parents gave me to the children we will have in the future.